Count Dracula. We know the iconic, terrifying, and vampiric gothic horror figure as a fictional character created by the Irish author Abraham Stoker in 1897, but the Transylvanian blood drinker was actually based on the 15th century Romanian ruler known as Vlad Dracul III. Vlad Dracul was the ruler of the Romanian region of Wallachia, obtaining the title of Voivode or Prince of Wallachia in 1448. Vlad was the son of Vlad Dracul II, or Vlad the Dragon of Wallachia, which is what gave him his right to the Wallachian throne, along with him being the grandson of the legendary Wallachian ruler Mircea the Elder. Vlad came from a long line of Romanian royalty, being a descendant of the first independent ruler of Wallachia and founder of the legendary House of Basarab, Basarab I, also known as Basarab the Founder or Basarab the Great. His father, Vlad Dracul II, would go on to create his own subsidiary house from the House of Basarab known as the House of Draculesti. Vlad's father was also part of a knight order that was created in 1408 by Holy Roman Emperor Sigismund I, known as the Order of the Dragon, which was meant to act as a defense against the incumbent Ottoman Turks. Vlad had more than his fair share of encounters with the Ottoman Turks, with one of his first run-ins coming in 1442, where Vlad, along with his father and brother Radu the Handsome, would be imprisoned by the Ottoman Sultan Murad II, who ordered Vlad Dracul II to come to the Gallipoli Peninsula in Turkey to demonstrate his loyalty to the Turkish ruler. This was due to a distrust that stemmed from accusations made against the Wallachian voivode of treachery against the Ottoman Sultan. Vlad Dracul II and the legendary Transylvanian crusader and voivode of Transylvania, John Hunyadi, would meet up at the Romanian city of Târgu Veste, where Hunyadi demanded that Vlad Dracul II would join him in a crusade against the Ottoman Empire. Vlad II would remain neutral in the matter and would allow the Turks to pass through Transylvania, which led to the humiliating defeat of the Ottomans in March of 1442. This only made matters worse between the Ottoman Emperor Murad II and Vlad Dracul II, which led to the eventual imprisonment of Vlad Dracul III, his brother Radu, and his father, where they would be held in the Ottoman fortress Igorgos. Vlad II would be released by the end of the year in 1442, but Vlad III and his brother would remain in the Turkish prison until about the year 1447 and would be released due to Vlad Dracul II acknowledging Murad II's authority and paying homage to him. Vlad would return home in 1448, where he would find out that his father and eldest brother Mircea II were murdered the year before at the hands of the Wallachian nobles. Upon the death of his father, Vlad would now become a potential candidate for the title of Voivode of Wallachia. However, a pretender or proxy ruler that was appointed to the highest position in Wallachia by John Hunyadi had already taken the title. The pretender was Vladislav II, who was the second cousin of Vlad, and this would lead to the first of many campaigns that Vlad would have to undergo in order to regain his rightful title as the ruler of Wallachia. Strife between John Hunyadi and the Ottomans led to Vladislav contributing to the military efforts of his contemporary Hunyadi, which left the throne wide open for Vlad to take. In October of 1448, the young Vlad, with the assistance of the Ottoman forces, would lead a very bloody coup d'etat and would finally take the throne at the Romanian city of Târgu Veste. This, however, would be a very short reign for Vlad, barely lasting a month before the previous ruler of the throne, Vladislav II, returned in November and would regain the Wallachian throne by defeating Vlad and his military forces, causing him to flee south of the Danube River, seeking refuge in the Ottoman Empire. Vlad's second rule will come 8 years later after being exiled from his homeland and forced to flee, first to the Ottoman Empire in the city of Edirne, right after his fall, and then to Moldavia, where he would seek refuge in a country that had a close kinship with Wallachia, and the current ruler of that time, Bogdan II, being his father's brother-in-law, also helped Vlad in his attempt to regroup and make his eventual return to Wallachia. It is generally believed that Vlad invaded Wallachia in either April or July of 1456 with the help of Hungarian forces and was able to defeat Vladislav II, with some legends even stating that Vlad beheaded his predecessor in one-on-one combat. From here will begin one of the most brutal reigns of any ruler in history, and the legendary name Dracula will be etched into the annals of history for perpetuity. Vlad was said to have killed anywhere from 40,000 to 100,000 people in various ways, but his favorite form of capital punishment was impaling, and this would be the source of his nickname, Vlad Tepes, or Vlad the Impaler. Now, just to clarify how brutal this method of torture was, let me define what impaling is. The act of impaling is a method of torture that consists of a human body being pierced through by a stake, pole, or hook, either from the front, back, or more notably, vertically through the person's rectum or genitalia, with the exit usually being through the person's mouth or neck. The ruthless Vlad would preside over two of the most notable instances of this use of torture ever in history. First coming in 1459, where he had 30,000 Anglo-Saxon settlers in Transylvania, along with Transylvanian boyars or officials who tried to come against his suzerainty, impaled. The second, and probably most famous instance of this, was in 1462, when Vlad had impaled over 20,000 Turkish prisoners after he had invaded and ravaged Ottoman territory south of the Danube River and devastated the areas between Serbia and the Black Sea region. This assault came off of the heels of the Ottomans' attempt to remove Vlad from the throne of Wallachia due to him no longer paying tributary to the Ottomans in 1459. This caused the Ottoman Sultan at the time, Mehmed II, to gather over 60,000 troops to march towards Wallachia to confront Vlad. Historical accounts have stated that upon the Sultan's arrival, he was so repulsed at the sight of the over 20,000 impaled Turkish bodies that had been put on display by Vlad outside the capital city of Wallachia, Targoviste, that he immediately retreated back to the now Ottoman-conquered Byzantine capital of Constantinople. Vlad himself even attested to the gruesome acts that he presided over by writing a letter to one of his military allies in 1462, stating in the letter, "We killed 23,884 Turks, without counting those whom we burned in homes or the Turks whose heads were cut off by our soldiers. Thus, your highness, you must know that I have broken the peace." Vlad's sadism did not stop there. Some legends suggest that Vlad would also dip his bread in the blood of his impaled victims and would also outright dine among the lifeless bodies as well. A brutal man Vlad the Impaler was, and these acts, along with many other lesser-known displays of brutality, earned him the reputation that he would become most known for and made him the most famous Wallachian ruler in history, which is saying something considering the very many famous ancestors that came before him. Despite the brief sense of terror that Vlad's gruesome display of grotesque torture that he left the Ottoman Sultan to view in utter disgust, this did not stop him from pushing forward into the impaler city of Wallachia. With his more than 90,000 troops, in comparison to Vlad's 20 to 30,000, Vlad was unable to stop the Turkish invasion that would lead to their eventual takeover of Wallachia and its capital Targoviste. The Turks, however, were still unable to completely subdue Vlad and would eventually leave the country, but would place Vlad's younger half-brother, who had been subjugated with Vlad under Ottoman Turkish captivity as children, in charge of the invasion. Vlad was able to achieve quite a few military victories against his brother, but due to his rather tenuous relationship with the Wallachian nobility over the years, he had alienated himself from most of them, which led to them siding with Vlad's brother over him. In order to counteract this, Vlad made negotiations with the current ruler of Hungary at the time, Matthias Corvinus, which lasted for a couple of weeks before the Hungarian ruler decided that he did not want to wage war with the Ottomans, and would have Vlad captured and imprisoned in the Romanian city of Belgrade, and then would later be taken to Visegrad, where he would spend 14 years in the Hungarian prison. In the summer of 1475, Vlad's release from imprisonment would be discussed by his cousin and eventual legendary Prince of Moldavia for more than 40 years, Stefan III or Stefan the Great, who sought to have Vlad placed back on the throne of Wallachia so he could have someone who he knew would act as opposition to the Ottomans, contrary to the then current ruler at the time, Basarab the Old, who had submitted himself to the Ottoman Empire. Vlad was said to have been released after he converted to Catholicism, which was the main religion of the Hungarians at the time. It is believed that Vlad made his return back to Wallachia around 1475 and was ready to once again reclaim his rightful place as voivode of Wallachia. Vlad would receive assistance mainly from Stefan V Bathroi, voivode of Transylvania, and Moldavians sent by his cousin Stefan the Great of Moldavia. Basarab the Elder and his constituency fled at the mere sight of the large army that Vlad had amassed and sought refuge from the Turks in which he was allied to. Vlad would once again be named voivode of Wallachia, but most of the support that he had received from Stefan V Bathroi would return back to Transylvania, which left Vlad in a very precarious and vulnerable position, now with the Ottomans soon making their return to. Due to Vlad's rather cruel and unusual treatment towards a lot of the noble classes of Wallachia, they had once again preferred the alternative to Vlad to take hold of the rulership, because of their belief that they had a better chance of surviving under the stewardship of Basarab the Elder. The peasantry would also leave Vlad to deal with the Ottomans on his own, which left Vlad with approximately 2,000 men at his disposal. Vlad's army of 2,000 would be left to go up against the Turkish/Basarab forces of over 4,000 near Snagov in Romania, where they were said to have been cornered and destroyed. Many interpretations of Vlad's death have been made over the years, some asserting that he was killed in battle against the Ottomans in the capital city of Romania, Bucharest, in December of 1476. Other sources believe that he was assassinated by the Wallachian boyars or noblemen, and some believe that he died while being surrounded by the Moldavian guards that had been loaned to him by his cousin Stefan the Great. One fact remains, however: Dracula's body was decapitated and even cut into pieces, but his head was sent to the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II in Istanbul, who preserved Dracula's head in honey until the Sultan decided to display it on a stake. Whatever the historical narrative is about Vlad Dracula III, and however he is remembered in the annals of history, there is no doubt that the legacy he has left behind is one of history's most impactful, storied, and even culturally relevant to this day. Stories and legends of Vlad Dracula have been passed down from generation to generation for over 500 years and have remained popular among folklorists and even commoners across countries such as, of course, Romania, along with Germany and Russia. Some tales maintain that he was a national hero that was just trying to defend his land against Turkish and Transylvanian Saxon or German invaders, while others tell the story of a man who was a champion of the people against the oppressive Wallachian noblemen. Even today, the story of Dracula, though far more mythologized than the actual historical events that happened in Vlad's life, are still told and have been the inspiration for countless novels, movies, and TV series all across the world, so it is safe to say that the legend known as Vlad Dracula III or Vlad Tepes, or most famously, Dracula, will never die off.